work hard. Keep your head down. Your work will speak for itself. This was my mom's advice for a lot of things. School, hobbies, life in general. And it hit a little bit differently because I knew that it was coming from her position as an immigrant mom in a foreign country and culture. But that said, let's take a show of hands. How many of you have heard this advice or something similar to it before? All right, decent number. How many of you actually believe it? There we go. Coming late. Well, I believed it. As a new grad out of college, as a software engineer, I was going into my first job, and I was a ball of nerves. I was so anxious. So I basically clung to this advice like a lifeline. Gotta keep my head down, gotta work hard, don't make waves, hustle, that's it, that's it. And all of that anxiety kept bubbling up through way too many HR onboarding meetings until finally I was able to sit down at my ergonomic Herman Miller chair, pull out my brand new MacBook Pro, and get to work. It's kind of hard to let your work speak for itself when you have no idea what you're supposed to be working on. First day, huh? Want me to show you the ropes? Yes, please. That was Ajay. Imagine me, except slightly shorter and with perfectly coiffed hair. Or just hair, I suppose. He was also a new grad, but he had been around at the company for about 9 months longer than I did. And anytime I had a question, I was able to come to him, and immediately the anxiety would drain away. How do I get rebase? What's Spark? Where can I buy a sandwich? All important questions that I need answered on my first day. But I had a friend, I had a colleague, I had a comrade, and rather than clinging to that advice as a lifeline, I was comfortable, and I was able to get shit done. So after one very long night of debugging memory issues, when basically we went out for drinks, he let slip how much he was making. And I felt a pit grow in my stomach. That was less than me. That was noticeably less than me. We were doing the same work at the same place, had the same experience, except for that part where he trained me and I was making more than him. This isn't an anomaly. For a lot of immigrant workers, living with a sword of visa sponsorship over their head, there aren't that many options. And without options, it's much more difficult to negotiate. And if you can't negotiate, work very easily becomes a one-sided bargain. And it's not just immigrant workers. The systemic and illegal underpayment of workers is known as wage theft. And it happens to construction subcontractors, to farmhands, to high-skilled immigrant laborers, and to service workers. But in general, it happens to people who have very few options, like Ajay. But not me, because I had citizenship, through no fault of my own, because my dad was the one who moved to the US. For my dad's first job out of college, he was also an engineer. He was working at a manufacturing plant in Kuwait, even though he graduated from India. And as an Indian worker, he got paid 1/3 the amount of people doing the exact same work 3 miles down the road. So it's not surprising that a number of his coworkers ended up striking, looking for better wages and working conditions. It's also not surprising that management didn't immediately give them higher wages. But they didn't even try to negotiate. They didn't even acknowledge there was a problem. The first thing they did was to ask my dad and other engineers to take up guns to protect the factory machinery, basically taking up arms against their colleagues who just wanted better working conditions. Now, in my dad's case, the answer was obvious: hell no. And at the first opportunity, he decided to leave, to immigrate to the US, where hopefully he could find a better system. But in the US, wage theft is the largest form of property theft. It dwarfs all others combined. armed robbery, larceny, grand theft auto, put them all together, you don't even come close. $50 billion a year. That's 50 with a 50. That's around the same size as the GDP of Wyoming. People who are illegally paid under minimum wage, $15 billion. And it happens to people who have few options, and it happens only a few dollars at a time, which is why it's so pervasive. Now, you might be feeling the same way I did, which is to say that you might be feeling frustrated and you might be feeling powerless. You might be feeling angry and shocked at the scale of what's occurring. But you also might be wondering to yourself, there's not that much that I can do. Wrong. I believe that we're actually at an inflection point here. For the first time, public support of workers' protections and unions more broadly has crossed 70% in the US. In the post-COVID era, now that we finally have tight labor markets, you actually see workers, blue and white collar, in a position to negotiate. For however briefly, work is actually a two-sided bargain again. And in this moment, we have an opportunity. Now it's become fashionable with a lot of technologies like ChatGPT and other automation to talk about the future of work. To worry about, okay, is this going to make work transactional and are workers going to be replaceable? But I hope I've convinced you by now that that's actually been the case for decades. A more productive conversation is how can we use technology to improve the future of workers? And by that I mean, unlike my dad at his first job and me at mine, how can we ensure that our children's first experience in the workplace isn't as a one-sided bargain? And we do have the ability to build technologies that actually do restore balance to the workplace and protect workers' rights. Communications technologies, so that way workers can organize and also raise complaints. User interfaces that can make sense of complex financial information, so that way when you get your paycheck, you actually know if you're getting what you're owed. Analytics, so that way you can identify and call out bad behavior. All of these are tools and processes that we can institute in the organizations that we intend to enter or start. Work hard, keep your head down, and your work will speak for itself. Part of the reason we all hear this advice is because we want to believe that work will actually pays and that good work gets rewarded. We want to believe that work is a two-sided bargain. And the people in this room have the ability to make that happen. Because in the organizations that we go on to enter, that we go on to lead, that we go on to do business with, we can actually institute these cultural changes to make sure that work remains this two-sided bargain with tools and processes to ensure a balanced workplace. And for me, that's what really matters, because that's how we define the future of workers, not just for us entering into the environment now, but for coming generations. Thank you very much.